All right. Welcome back to the weekly Rotoworld basketball Q&A. We are here, I guess I am here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, answering any questions you may have regarding fantasy basketball, regardless of format, regardless of league size. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, so you feel free to drop them in the chat. I will give a few minutes for questions to roll in a little bit. Just a fair warning as we're getting started. It is nasty out where I am. There's a lot of inclement weather, tornado warning not far from me. Chance that the power goes out and we lose connection. Hopefully we're able to stay rolling for the next hour the entire time. But just be prepared if I randomly cut out. It is not because I quit. It is not because I just decided to call it a day. It is because of power issues. But hopefully we will be good to go. Should be a lot to talk about here. Just last night we had 6 NBA games, and we had a lot of devastating injury news with Tyrese Halliburton exiting early after kind of slipping and looked like a pretty nasty hamstring injury. The most recent report is from, I believe it was Woj. I'm scrolling back to double check. Yeah, it was from Woj. Will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. It's a grade 1 left hamstring strain, which is, ideal considering. Obviously, we don't want a hamstring strain, but all things considered, this is much better than what could have been a much longer absence. TJ McConnell should still be the add until Halliburton's back. It'll be at least 2 weeks, but it still could be longer. Could be closer to 3 to 4 weeks. So McConnell should be the priority add. And then Andrew Nembhard should also be a solid option off the bench. I'd assume McConnell starts and plays a little bit more minutes. Both should be able to provide some assists. McConnell's probably a little bit better to add in some steals as well. The other big news that came out last night was Ja Morant out for season he's going to have season-ending shoulder surgery, which is just devastating considering he missed the first 25 games of the year. Managers were still drafting him in the mid-rounds with the idea that, hey, if we can make it through the first 25 games, the first about 2 months of the season, that we'll have a guy that would be drafted significantly earlier, ready to roll for the rest of the season. And now he's played 9 games, and now his season's over. Really just a sucky situation, but he's supposed to be healthy going into next season. Should be looking to get some revenge after what was pretty much a lost year. I think that my personal favorite add out of this is Vince Williams Jr., who didn't start in place of Ja Morant in the last game, but he played 37 minutes. Luke Kennard started, only played 22. I'd prefer Vince Williams over Kennard, unless you just really need some threes, like you're in a deeper, like a 16-team league, and you just need a couple extra threes. Kennard will have the chance to just go off just from being in the starting lineup. Like, he will see at least 20 minutes per game, and if he really has it going, they'll probably keep rolling with him. That'll give him a chance to provide some value, but Vince Williams is a guy that I really like, really, really good defender, has shown the ability to knock down some threes as well. I believe in that game that he played 37 minutes, which was their last one, 19 points, 9 boards, 2 blocks, and 3 threes. That's really solid value for a guy that's pretty readily available on Yahoo leagues. We did have a couple other things get announced today. Cade Cunningham will be reevaluated in 7 to 10 days. Again, the reevaluation does not mean that he will be back after that time. So it could be a couple extra games. It could be a couple extra weeks if, he's just not, his body isn't responding well. Jaden Ivey is probably rostered in over 50% of Yahoo leagues now, but last night it was 49%. He's the guy that should receive kind of the biggest fantasy boost. We'll kind of get a better look at what that looks like for him as the priority option, because a lot of his time this season has been alongside Cade after getting to play a lot of his rookie year without him. So we'll get to kind of see what he looks like, how he's developed, and how he looks in a more of a ball handler heavy role. Alec Burks is probably my favorite ad that is pretty well available. He is as I'm pulling up the numbers here, he's been really good over the last couple of weeks. In the past 2 weeks, he's 85th according to Basketball Monster in 9 cat leagues all those shots that he had been taking at the beginning of the year where people were complaining and saying, why is Monty Williams allowing Alec Burks to come in here and be shooting as much as he is? But he's been hitting those shots, and then he's been able to take more because he's hitting them. So past 2 weeks, 17.4 points, 3.3 threes, shooting 46.9% from the field in 24.6 minutes per game. I think he's a solid ad, just only going to give you value really with points and threes and a high free throw percentage, 92% over the past 2 weeks. Not going to be able to give you anywhere near the value that Cade Cunningham has been giving this season, but he should be a solid option. Killian Hayes is the other guy that may have an opportunity to provide standard league value. He is technically ranked ahead of both Ivy and Burks in 9 cap value over the course of the season, but they're all outside the top 200, and Hayes' role has been dwindling, whereas Ivy and Burks have been playing a larger role as of late, and they've been playing better. Killian has not done much in his few minutes. Like, if you look at it, past 2 weeks, Basketball Monster has him 354th, averaging 2.3 points per game and shooting 25% from the field. It's just, that's not giving you anything in any format. The 4 assists per game are decent, but I mean, he might get a chance to get some more assists with Cade out, but that's about it. But I'm not a huge Killian Hayes fan. I'd be prioritizing Ivy and Burks. Marcus Sasser may get an opportunity as well to provide some deeper league value. But again, like, the role just hasn't been consistent for him or for a lot of other guys in Detroit as Monty Williams experiments with other options, just trying to find something that results in wins. Maybe Sasser will get a chance. He looked good in limited minutes earlier this season. We'll see if he gets the chance to. The other big thing that I believe happened even more recently was Jakob Poeltl will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So Chris Boucher is probably the priority ad there. I believe Isaiah Mobley is another guy to consider in deeper leagues. He had a pretty good game the other night, but Isaiah Mobley, am I totally just throwing off my teams? Hold on. I think Isaiah Mobley is... He's still in Cleveland. Just kidding. Mixing up all my teams. Anyways, Chris Boucher is the priority ad here. It would be nice if Precious Achiuwa was still there, but he is the guy that I'd be more interested in adding. Thank you, Parker Finley. Jonte Porter is the other little brother that I was thinking of, not Isaiah Mobley. I'm glad you were able to catch on to that. This is my third show of the day, so apologize for all of these names kind of running together for me. But I think Chris Boucher should be the priority ad there. And then the other news is Chris Paul will be reevaluated in 3 weeks after undergoing surgery on his hand. And I think Brandon Pajemski is probably the best ad in Golden State. Corey Joseph may see a couple minutes as kind of a backup ball handler, but he's not going to be able to give you enough minutes to provide any real standard league value. Pajemski is the priority there. He's been really good when he's gotten the opportunity this season. We'll see if that opens up the door for a couple other guys to see minutes, like maybe Moses Moody returns to rotation a little bit. But as far as guys to add in standard leagues, Pajemski is the guy. And let me just recap. Let me just to make sure that nothing else. Yeah, no other major news happened, but that's quite a bit of injury news over the past, really Wow, my time is all running together. We'll just call it past 24 hours. But we will go ahead and get into the questions before I start making up other random numbers. This one is from Jason Johns. Hey guys, 12-team 9 cap. Would you trade Bane and Reeves for Tatum and Giddey? I don't think that this is something I'd do. I think I'd rather have Bane and Reeves. Would depend a little bit on the categories that you need help in. Like, Giddey has been pretty disappointing this season, but he's still able to get you decent rebounds and decent assists. I prefer the production from Austin Reeves, even if I'm kind of lower on Austin Reeves. He's been giving better points than Josh Giddey, obviously, better threes. Comparable rebounds and assists, a little bit less, but still solid. And then I actually, might not, I don't know about prefer Bane over Tatum, but it's close enough that I'm going to let the preference for Reeves swing that trade. Bane has been 28th in 9-cat this season. I believe that, Tatum has been 23rd, which is just slightly better. However, Bane was a little bit higher than that before John Morant was back. And now that John Morant's out for the rest of the season, I'm assuming his value is going to kind of go back up a little bit. So yeah, I think I'd prefer the Reeves and Desmond Bane side in this trade, unless you are really in need of the rebounds because Tatum is a better rebounder than Bane. But that's probably the only way that I would consider doing this. I'd definitely prefer to have Bane and Reeves here. Is it time to sell high on Jaren Jackson Jr.? A guy that's provided 4th-round value. He's been really good over the last few games. Last 2 weeks, he's 19th according to Basketball Monster. 1.3 steals, 1.9 blocks is great, 20.8 points. If you're able to get like a top 20 guy, top 25 guy, which just looking at strictly 9-cat value, 25th is Trae Young and 20th is Derek White. I think I might try and do something in that range where we're able to get a top 25, top 30 guy. And obviously 9-cat value doesn't directly line up with how players are valued by managers. But if you're able to get a guy that's consensus top 20, consensus top 25, I'd probably do that. I think Jaren Jackson Jr., he's been a 4th-rounder this year, probably closer to like the top 40, maybe borderline top 30 range for me. His value's obviously inflated a bit by his high block numbers. It's been lower this year, but still a lot of his value comes from the blocks. But he's not a borderline 1st-rounder because he's not averaging a ridiculous amount of blocks while nobody else is averaging anywhere close. Because like this year, if he was averaging his 3 blocks per game from last year, he would be 2nd to Wemby. So his value isn't quite as inflated. So yeah, I think if I'm able to get like a top 25 guy for Jaren Jackson, then I'd probably sell high on him. But I don't know how plausible that is. So I may just kind of roll with what he is giving, because I'm assuming that if you have him, that you drafted him with the idea of building a team around shot blockers, the guys that can knock down threes and allow him to really thrive in that situation. Let's see. Another one from Machiavelli the Dawn. Appreciate your help. No problem. What's the next move with the news on Poeltl? And that is going to be the Chris Boucher pickup, and Jonte Porter is the other guy. But as Parker Finley, who has been a massive help to me as we go in this, Jonte Porter is not on Yahoo. So if you're playing on Fantrax, then Jonte Porter might be worth a look in deeper leagues. I don't know if he's a 12-team guy, but deep leagues, yes. Chris Boucher should be the priority ad here, though. Whether he starts or not, he will have to play big minutes at center. Like they could, I don't know if they will. And it's possible that something has been said about this that I glanced over, just didn't see. But they could, roll with Siakam at center, Scotty Barnes at power forward. Like that could be an option. But either way, like Boucher would see at least 20, 25 minutes per game, I'd imagine, which should be enough time for him to provide solid value. And hasn't done it this year, but he has showcased the ability to block shots in the past. Just a few years ago, obviously 2020, 2021 season, he was 40th in 9-cap on Basketball Monster in just 24.2 minutes per game because he blocked 1.9 shots. If he's able to give anywhere close to 2 blocks, decent rebounds, and he can shoot threes as well, like I'd say he's worth an ad, even if it's only for 2 weeks. And it should be considered kind of a high priority addition here. And then Parker, I will answer the question now that you've helped me so much. I will try and help you back. Trace Jackson Davis or Goga Batadze rest of the season. 9-cap head-to-head. This one's tough because Trace Jackson Davis has played a larger role as of late. We have to see how Draymond Green's return impacts that at all. Like, is he still going to play the large role that he has played over the last couple of weeks? 24.7 minutes last 2. And then Goga Bitadze has really benefited from Wendell Carter Jr. being in and out of the lineup, borderline top 100 player, and has been past 2 weeks borderline top 75. And then even more recently has played at least 25 minutes in 4 of his last 5 games. So rest of the season, I think that Goga is probably the safer option just because even when Wendell has played, he hasn't looked good and he's been in and out of the lineup. So Bitadze may be the safer option, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and say Goga because Steve Kerr has been pretty wishy-washy with his rotations, saying, hey, I'm going to try and give this lineup a chance for a few games and then literally change it the next game, which is, really cool. But Trace Jackson-Davis will still have some good games and provide I think borderline standard league value over the course of the year. But I think Goga is probably the safer option. Hayes or Boucher, the better pickup, 12-team 9-cat head-to-head. I would say Boucher. I think I already said that I'm notoriously low on Killian Hayes. I don't know anybody that's particularly high on Killian Hayes, and apologies if somebody is, and I didn't know. He's just not my guy. But I like Chris Boucher, not like super high on him, but I think this is a good opportunity for him. And Killian Hayes has, I think, more competition for minutes at center than Boucher will, because Boucher should be the starting center. If he's not, because they're rolling with a smaller lineup, then he will play 20, 25 minutes per game off the bench. There's a chance that Killian Hayes plays 20 minutes per game, but I think that's kind of the max because they still have Jaden Ivey, they have Alec Burks, they have Marcus Sasser. Like, I don't think they're going to prioritize Killian Hayes minutes. And then to expand on this, the better pickup between Drummond, Boucher, Killian Hayes, Nembhard, and Luke Kennard. I think there's a chance that Andre Drummond gets moved back to the bench for their next game and Vooch returns to the starting lineup. So as far as how I'm prioritizing them, I'm probably going to go Boucher 1, Nembhard 2. I don't know if I'd go Drummond or Kennard 3 or 4. Maybe I'll go Kennard 3 just because more of the season-long value. Drummond 4, then Killian Hayes 5. Drummond could still start their next game. Vooch is, unless they lift the minutes restriction, because he played 30 minutes in their last game after kind of having a restriction around 25 because of the overtime. Andre Drummond in 23 minutes had 21 points and 15 boards. Are they going to continue to have Vooch's minutes limited? I don't know. Are they going to continue to start Andre Drummond? I don't know. We'll have to see for their next game. But I think I would take the opportunity for Drummond at still seeing 20 minutes for 2 games and then dropping him than Killian Hayes at potentially seeing 20 minutes for 3 or 4 games. Just because, again, pretty low on Hayes. So I'm not trying to make this just a show where I sit here and trash Killian Hayes, but yeah. Boucher and then Nembhard and then Kennard is probably the top 3 for me. All right. Which of these 3 guys would you recommend picking up? Dante DiVincenzo, Scoot Henderson, Jalen Green, Buddy Hield, TJ McConnell, or D'Angelo Russell? Wow. That's a few guys I wouldn't necessarily expect to be on the waiver wire. I think prioritizing the next 2 weeks, I would go with TJ McConnell. Prioritizing the rest of the season, I think I'd go Scoot. But I think just because Dante DiVincenzo, he's been solid and he's had some big games, but he's only played 21.4 minutes per game. Still, the 9-cat value is pretty solid for a guy playing such a small role. But I think that kind of limits his upside. Jalen Green has had flashes of showing why he was the number 2 overall pick, but his value is still pretty bad. So maybe in a points league, I would be higher on him, but not really loving what he's been giving. And I'm already just kind of lower on Jalen Green than probably most people are. Buddy Hield, I still have rostered, but man, it's discouraging because even when he's gotten minutes recently, he hasn't played particularly well. He did okay against Boston, shot 54.5%, 15 points, 3 threes, but the upside of hitting a bunch of threes that he had earlier in the season just doesn't seem to be there, largely because of the lack of minutes. But yeah, it's just not super high on adding him at this point. D'Angelo Russell is kind of in the same boat where it's like he's a guy that you would have imagined was drafted pretty early at the beginning of the year. Last 2 weeks, 26.8 minutes per game. He did play a larger role against the Clippers 2 nights ago. On Sunday, played 31 minutes, but production still wasn't great. 13.6 assists, like 179 in 9-cap on Basketball Monster over the past 2 weeks, which if you're looking for the sneaky assists, sure, he's good there. But I can get that from TJ McConnell in a starting role and get better efficiency and steals without as many threes. And then Scoot, I think you're still going to deal with the rookie struggles, but he's been much better recently. His 9-cap value is still bad in recent weeks and over the course of the season. The free throw percentage has started to go down a little bit, which is actually like pretty disappointing because he had a nice stretch of shooting free throws really well. But past 2 weeks, 16.4 points, 7.6 assists, 3.6 boards, 2 threes. The turnovers are bad. The field goal percentage is atrocious, but he's a rookie point guard, still figuring things out. Like those things will improve. But I think as the season continues, he will still like be able to put up these numbers and hopefully add some efficiency along with it. So if I'm just looking for a guy that's saying, okay, I'm going to add him and keep him on my team the rest of the year, of these guys, I think Scoot Henderson's my favorite. But if we're just looking at the next 2 weeks or next few weeks, TJ McConnell's probably the guy just because he should start until Tyrese Halliburton's back. All right, we are flying through these. I still have a couple more, so hopefully a few more can start rolling in. 16-team points league. Would you trade Shaedon Sharpe and Jonathan Kuminga for Jamal Murray? Off the top of my head, I want to really quickly say yes. Shaedon Sharpe's been, better recently. He's back up. He played 40 minutes in their last one after kind of being on a minutes restriction the first few games back after a 5-game absence. Jonathan Kuminga, I'm just so wishy-washy on. If they trade him, that would probably change this dynamic a little bit. If they trade him to a situation where he's able to start and see minutes consistently, then I like that better. Obviously, they've Steve Kerr kind of force-fed him a bunch of minutes 2 games ago, was back down to 25 minutes in their last game. But I think the upside of Jamal Murray, I like doing 2-for-1 trades in redraft leagues to try and get the best player available. So that's kind of what I'd be rolling with in this situation. Jamal Murray is far and away the best player out of these 3. It would kind of, I'm assuming if it's just standard points scoring, then Jamal Murray is going to be significantly better unless it's a wonky points format. But yeah, I think I would trade Shaedon Sharpe and Jonathan Kuminga for Jamal Murray, no problem. All right. Hey, Wayne, would you trade Miles Bridges, Jalen Duren, and Kobe White for Kevin Durant and Fred VanVleet? And head-to-head 9-cap. Wow, this seems like fairly even. You're getting arguably the 2 best players in the deal in KD and Fred VanVleet, but it's not significant. Like Kevin Durant's far and away the best player in the deal. Fred VanVleet hasn't been quite as good this year, but he's still 3rd round production with the steals up to 1.1 steals per game. And then 3rd rounder, and then Miles Bridges, I believe, is where's he at now? He's a 4th rounder, so it's not far off for Fred VanVleet. Jalen Duren, 7th rounder, and Kobe White, I believe, is 9th rounder. Okay. I think I'd do this. I think I was just saying this, getting the 1 for the 2, in this case, the 2 for the 3. Obviously, you can say Kevin Durant staying healthy is a factor, but Jalen Duren's already missed a ton of time. as well, and anybody getting hurt would impact that. And KD has been relatively healthy this year, and I think just when he's on the floor, the difference is just so huge that, yeah, I would probably do this, but I think it's pretty even. Like, I don't hate it for either side to be able to do this. All right. And just to go back for the 16-team points league, it is a Dynasty league, and I think that does change things for me. I'd rather have Shaedon Sharpe and Kuminga than Jamal Murray in a Dynasty league. I'll reference my Dynasty rankings, which I've just finally finished after weeks of working on at my top 507 players, what it ended up being. And so Jamal Murray is 57th for me. Shaedon Sharpe is 84th, and Kuminga is 119th. But this is generally for category leagues, not points leagues. I think Shaedon Sharpe is significantly better in a points league than in a category league. So I would prefer Shaedon Sharpe and Kuminga in a points dynasty league than Jamal Murray, unless I was selling out for a championship and I said, hey, I can win it this year. Adding in Jamal Murray makes this a thing. Like, I can win if I have Jamal Murray on my team. Then I'd be fine slightly overpaying and making this trade. But as far as just general value, I would prefer Shaedon Sharpe and Jonathan Kuminga. All right. Jimmy asks, would you trade Donovan Mitchell for Pascal Siakam and Jordan Poole? Thanks. Regardless of format, I think, whether this is redraft or dynasty, this is pretty easily a no for me. Because Donovan Mitchell has been a top 10. Basketball Monster has him 8th in 9Cat. Siakam has been good. I like Siakam. His 9Cat value isn't great, but he's still a really good player, but not comparable to Donovan Mitchell. And frankly, Jordan Poole has been bad. I know Zach and I used to spend at least 5 minutes a show trashing Jordan Poole, and I will I guess in honor of Zach, trash Jordan Poole a little bit because he just has been bad. Like, he's had a couple good games. He actually did play well last night. I had 15 in the third quarter and then played 4 minutes in the fourth quarter. It was pretty weird. Weird rotations didn't really give him a chance to build off that. He's had a couple good games over the past month since I dropped him, really, but he's also had plenty of bad ones. So no, I definitely prefer Donovan Mitchell over Siakam and Poole. If this was Dynasty, it may be slightly more even, but I'd still rather have Donovan Mitchell in this. All right. I am 10th in a 12-team 9-cat head-to-head league. Worth dropping Keontae for TJ McConnell if nobody with a higher waiver priority swoops. Short-term upside high enough. I'd say yes. I do like Keontae George. I think he has standard league value, but it may still, it's not going to be consistent, one, because Will Hardy's rotation, especially in the backcourt, has been really weird. Basically, everybody except Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson's rotation has been weird. It's been around 20 minutes, sometimes a few minutes higher, sometimes a few minutes lower. I believe in their last game, it was 24 minutes for George and 18 for Colin Sexton. And the game before that, it was 27 for Sexton and 16 for Keontae George. Around there, those numbers might be slightly off, but it's kind of frustrating to deal with, but it's how he's coaching the team. That's totally fine. It's understandable to try and have different options. But I prefer TJ McConnell's guaranteed production for the next 2 to 3 weeks. If I wanted to reference some waiver claims to show the magnitude, and granted, this happened before we knew how long there's only gonna be a 2, maybe probably at most 4 week absence for Tyrese Halliburton. I spent 155 fab out of 1,000, which you get 1,000 over the course of the season. I spent 155 to pick up TJ McConnell and was able to get him. And this is it's in the FBI, the Fantasy Basketball International World Cup. So it's a little bit of a different format where we it's a ton of people. For anybody who doesn't play in it or doesn't know, it's I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot of people where there's a bunch of different 12-team divisions. And so the playoffs started this week, and then we have 3 weeks of the playoffs, and then whoever wins those moves on to a smaller the winners all move into a new league, and then they redraft, and then they play that out. And then I think it gets even smaller after that. But I could be wrong on the details. Anyways, that league is, if I lose, then I'm done. So that did factor into that, spending 155 fab. But in the industry pickup league, which is featuring a bunch of the top analysts in fantasy basketball, a very competitive league, it out of still 1,000 fab over the course of the season. And this was, just make sure I'm saying this right. It's Mike Barner, who writes for RotoWire, a number of other sites as well. I just want to make sure he was RotoWire before I started saying that. Spent 353 of his 1,000 fab on that, which is by far the biggest move that has happened in that league, and an insane amount of fab went into picking up McConnell. Now, granted, if he knew it was only going to be a 2 to 4 week absence, maybe he wouldn't have spent so much. However, I don't think there's anything wrong with blowing the bag on somebody that's going to be able to provide a ton of value over the course of the season. Now it's looking like a lot because it's a shorter term absence, but still, that's the magnitude of the type of fantasy impact that McConnell can have as a starter. Rest of the season outlook for Shaedon Sharpe and 9-cap head to head. It's pretty interesting. I just got done talking with Rhett Bauer on my Take Me Later podcast at a live Dynasty Q&A, and we were talking about Sharpe. And I was kind of saying, like, granted, this is more of his Dynasty outlook, but is he more of your Anthony Simons, your Tyler Hero, your guy that's going to be able to score a ton of points from a young age and provide value in enough other categories to have his 9-cap value look good? Or is he going to be like a Keldon Johnson, RJ Barrett? These were my comparisons, not his. So if you hate them, you can trash me, not him. Kind of looking at what kind of scorer is he going to be, because he's going to be able to score the ball no problem. Like, that's not in question. He looks like he'll be able to score more efficiently than an RJ Barrett, at least shoot a better free throw percentage than RJ, and provide value in other categories enough. He's been, Basketball Monster has him at 168 over the course of the season. I think he's a guy that you still roster, like, just for being a really good scorer. But it's hard to rely on him in other categories. So I wouldn't blame anybody for not wanting to roster him. I don't even think I have him in a redraft league. So yeah, I think he's a borderline rosterable guy, especially, he has games where he plays a ton of minutes. It hasn't really been the case over the past couple of weeks. He's been injured and then on a minutes restriction, but he played 40.2 minutes per game in their last game. And 21 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 2 steals, a block, 3 threes. Yeah, like, no rebounds and assists. Like, you really can't rely on him for much. But yeah, I think that's kind of my outlook. It's kind of hard to put a number on him because he's a young guy that could pop off or just be average. And this is a follow-up from the Keontae for TJ McConnell. Better to drop Dante DiVincenzo or Keontae George? That's pretty tough for me. I think I would prefer to drop Dante DiVincenzo. He's been a little bit more solid, but I think Keontae George has a little bit more upside. You may just have to wait a little bit for it. The Jazz are in contention for a play-in spot. Will they stay there? I don't know. Are they going to play their starters, trying to compete for a spot the rest of the season, or are they going to start selling guys off the deadline, slowly slide down the standings, have guys get hurt, and kind of extend how long they're out just to make sure that, they're able to get better lottery odds, healthy going into next season, don't want to risk further injury, all things like that. I think I'd prefer Keontae George to keep around. Dante DiVincenzo's had some big games, but nah. Not a ton of upside for me unless he randomly pops off. Should I trade Kyrie because of his playoff schedule? I think I wouldn't trade him because of that, or like sell myself short because of that. I think it is something where, and if I'm not mistaken, the playoff schedule reference is to him playing 2 games in what I guess most people would or should have their championship game or championship week. He plays 2 games that week. If I'm not mistaken, it's somewhere in the middle of March. I don't remember the exact days, but I would trade Kyrie for a comparable player, but I'm not going to lose out on value because you still have to make the championship for that to really be much of a factor. And I don't remember off the top of my head if the schedule is unfavorable for him the weeks prior, but if I'm in the championship because of Kyrie and then he only plays 2 games, like, yeah, that kind of stinks, but I'm not going to get like significantly worse value for a guy just because Kyrie is only going to play 2 games that week. So I'd rather have 2 weeks of Kyrie or 2 games of Kyrie is probably comparable to 3 games of like more of an average player, but you still have to get there. And if I'd rather have Kyrie to help that happen. But let's see. So this one was a question I actually answered while on the RotoWire pod with Doc earlier. So shout out to the follow-up. The counter on Ja trade was for Colin Sexton, and he also provided the this was Couch had the rest of the trade just to make or for the reference, which is helpful. This is Jalen Green, Jaden Ivey, and a 2024 first that's going to be early, and a 2025 first for Colin Sexton and John Morant. And I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, that you're getting Ja, and now, or I guess that wouldn't make as much sense. Or if I guess you'd be trading away this to get, or were you trading away Ja and Sexton to get this package? I think that kind of changes things for me. And after looking, I think I was doing some of my Dynasty rankings, like looking back through that. I think one, having the picks be, potentially a top 5 first, that may alter it a little bit. I think in a points league, it's worth the price, but I'm not as convinced in a category league. I may prefer the Jalen Green, Jaden Ivey, and the 2 picks side actually in a category league because I've actually been thinking about this one since you asked it earlier. I'm starting to, so let's see, 14 team category. I'm selling on the 24 class personally. So I've started doing my scouting on the 2024 class. I had to finish up updating my Dynasty rankings before I did that. The only player I've really started to look into is Alex Sarr. And I think he's got the makings of a stud. So I know this class has, negative connotation and it doesn't have, a Victor Wembanyama or a Scoot Henderson, but I think that there is still guys that are going to be really, really good or have the upside to be really, really good. And I don't want to list out a ton of names until I've done my scouting and my research to say I feel confident in them. But everything I've seen from Alex Sarr makes him look really, really good. Like he's a 7'1" guy that can run, block shots, has a nice mid-range, can shoot threes, dribbles pretty well, good defender. Like watching the scouting report, because I was watching the guys from No Ceilings do their breakdown on YouTube of him, and it's like, man, like he kind of has like a lot of different things that he can do. So all that to say, I don't think that this class is going to be like god awful, like say like 2013 draft class where it was like Anthony Bennett went 1. Like I think that this class will be better than that. Even though that class did have a couple of good players, like obviously Giannis went 15th. Victor Oladipo was 2, I believe. So I don't think it's going to be quite that bad. And I think that there are some guys to be excited about. But with that being said, I think I'm locking in my final answer of if this is a points league, then I'm fine to pay the price and get Ja and Colin Sexton, especially because Colin Sexton will be even better in a points league. But I think if it's a category league, I might end up preferring the firsts because the 2025 first, I don't know exactly how high that'll end up being. But Cooper Flagg, I believe, will be in that class. And then hopefully some other solid players, I don't know names yet, of guys that'll be able to provide solid value. John Morant and Jaden Ivey, obviously, Ivey's had comparisons to Ja since he was at like in college and coming into the draft. He's not the player that Ja is, but he still has a ton of upside. And, Jalen Green over Colin Sexton, even if I'm not very high on either, I'd still have to give the edge to Jalen Green. But I think the picks kind of make the difference here for me. And so category league, I prefer Jalen Green, Jaden Ivey in the picks. Points league, I think I prefer Sexton and Ja Morant. All right. And then Admiral Nita, trade Evan Mobley for MPJ and Nick Richards, 12-team category league. I think if you've already been holding out and having Mobley on the IL, that I would probably just, if you're not suffering too much, like if your team is really struggling, then I may be fine making the move. Let me see the exact timeline. So 6 to 8 weeks from the middle of December, and we're about, I'd say 3 or 4 weeks in. So you're halfway through. If your team is really struggling and you need kind of the extra boost here, then yeah, I would be fine selling out and getting MPJ and Nick Richards. But if you're staying afloat, I think I'd rather just stick Evan Mobley in the IL and just keep him there. Nick Richards should be solid until Mark Williams is back, which we don't really know when. MPJ is a good option, but neither of them really compare to Mobley. But obviously, if he's not healthy, he's not doing anything. So if you're able to be patient, I'd prefer to be patient here. All right, I have an offer for Jarrett Allen. Goodness, I almost said Josh Allen. Jarrett Allen and Brandon Ingram for LeBron in a 10-team 9-cat head-to-head, punting free throw percentage, or roll with LeBron until the wheels fall off. This one's a tough one because I do think LeBron has been fantastic. But Jarrett Allen's been really good as of late with Mobley sidelined. And the 6 to 8 week timeline, I believe, would have him coming back in February. Like best case scenario would be early February. So it would be at least 3 more weeks. But Jarrett Allen was still solid outside of that. He's just been even better as of late, like past 2 weeks, number 8 and 9 cat on Basketball Monster. Like that's pretty insane. And better than LeBron. And Brandon Ingram has been pretty quiet as of late, but we know he kind of has that upside to be really good and be a really good, especially as a scorer, but be a really good fantasy option. He's just had a few bad games to start off 2024. Like that's really it as far as his scoring. So I think, I'm actually going to say I think I'd stick with LeBron because it's a 10-teamer. There's probably, like, I guess you need to go more star heavy because everybody has a little bit more talent on their team. And it's a little less about the depth as much as, say, a 16-team league would be. And with the punt free throw percentage build, I genuinely think you lose out on a little bit of value with Brandon Ingram. His free throw percentage hasn't been as good this year, but I think you lose out on a little bit of that value with Ingram, whereas LeBron is subpar on his free throws. So drop Tari Eason with no IL slots available, 9-cat head-to-head. I think that's fine. Totally fine to drop Tari Eason. If you're able to hold on to him, do it. But we really don't know about his situation, how long he's going to be out. He's going to be in and out of the lineup, even when he's healthy. He's still coming off the bench. Even with Dylan Brooks out, they've started Jayshawn Tate. So I really do like Eason long term, and I like his upside if they give him minutes. But if you really have to, I'm fine dropping him at this point if you can't hold him on the IL. I say that, and then I'm looking. He's 1.2 steals 1.4 steals, 0.9 blocks, 7 boards in just 22 minutes. That's freaking good. But yeah, I think if you don't need him, it's kind of have to be back and forth. I wouldn't drop him unless I was really set on who I'm adding. I think that's kind of what I'm going to stick with as my answer. He missed the last 4 games. He's questionable to play tonight. I think they play tonight. So I think if you have to, then it's okay to drop him, but I don't feel good about it. So maybe if you need to stream somebody else, try and add him back pretty quickly. All right, should I trade CJ McCollum and Shaden Sharpe for Pascal Siakam and Jordan Poole in a 9-cat head-to-head? I don't think I would do this one either. I'd rather have Sharpe than Poole, and CJ's been phenomenal this year, and I prefer him over Siakam. So I think this is pretty straightforward for me. I'd prefer CJ and Sharpe over Siakam and Jordan Poole. All right. Where does Cade's usage go, you think? Evenly dispersed, Bojan and Burks? Is it Asar time again? Does Monty Williams even know? That is the $1 million question here. What the heck is Monty Williams going to do? That was the other player I forgot to mention. I mentioned every other Pistons guard. I'm hoping that Cade Cunningham being out kind of moves Ivy over to point guard a little bit. Alec Burks fills in more minutes, but then it opens up minutes for Asar. I'm assuming Bojan is going to have more of a role offensively, see a few extra points, a couple extra shots. But I'm hoping that Asar Thompson can just see like 20 minutes. I think that would be really good just to see him back out on the floor. He started off the year so strong. Just want to see if he can still do that, which I think, if Monty Williams gives him the chance, he has the opportunity to. So hopefully it's Asar Thompson time, but it's been really strange in Detroit, really kind of interesting. We don't really know what Monty Williams is doing. So yeah, I think Bojan, Burks, Jaden Ivey, and then fingers crossed for Asar Thompson. Is there a Ja comparable player I prefer in 9-cat leagues? And then this is back to the Jaden Ivey Jaden Ivey package for John Sexton. Just don't know if I have it in me to tank that hard next year with a ton of elite bigs, which means tons of elite injury risk. That is fair. And the Ja comparison, I will tell you. So I have Ja at 38 in 9-cat. His 9-cat value isn't great, but he's still elite in a handful of categories. A couple of the guys that I have right above him are Kristaps, Jalen Johnson, Jalen Williams, Dame, Steph. Kind of that's ascending up. And then right below him is Jalen Brunson, Devin Vassell, Mikal Bridges, and Kyrie Irving. And Jaden, I think the main thing for this is that I have Jaden Ivey ranked a little higher than I think I thought I had him this morning when first asked this. Jaden Ivey I have at 51. So I think the difference between there's certainly a difference between what Ja can give and what Jaden Ivey can give. But I don't think that the difference is worth Jalen Green and 2 firsts and only getting Sexton back. And I think that's kind of the main issue that I have. If you're able to get, say, I'm going up. I have Steph at 33, Dame at 34. Be fine with that. I believe he said not looking to tank hard than maybe like a younger guard. So if you want to go even further, I don't know if this trade package would be enough to get it done, but that for like a De'Aaron Fox or a Tyrese Maxey, I have Maxey at 23 and Fox at 24 in my 9-cat rankings. I think I could get on board with that as well. But to me, I'm just a little bit lower on Ja, and perhaps I am being a little bit hard on Ja because his 9-cat value usually isn't as good as his actual production. But in looking at that, the points, the rebounds, and the assists are always great, and then it doesn't really give you steals, doesn't really give you blocks. So he's at 0.8 and 0.6 in his 9 games. 1.1 steals and 0.3 blocks last year. The field goal percentage is slightly below average, but he's a smaller point guard. The free throw percentage was a little bit better across his 9 games, but generally in the mid 70s, not 81 like it was this year. So yeah, I mean, getting a guy that can give you 25.1 points, 8.1 assists, 5.7 boards, that's incredibly valuable. Even if he was only 59th in 9-cat this year, that's why he's a little higher. But I don't really see him producing significantly better, which is why he's at 38, whereas there's other point guards that are a good bit ahead of him that may not be quite as good per se. I think that if you're starting a team, maybe obviously prefer Ja over Steph and Dame just because he's 10 years younger. But in Dynasty, I'd take, a handful of years of Steph being a top 10 or at least at worst second round guy for Steph and Dame, having that for 3 or 4 years versus, probably 6-7 years of what Ja's doing. And then because his game relies on so much athleticism, he's probably going to crash hard, not because, just because the athleticism will not be there when he's 34. I don't imagine that Ja is able to jump as high as he is and therefore have as much success as he has had when he's older. Whereas guys like Steph and Dame are different because they rely a little bit more on the shooting. All right. enough on my job breakdown. Yeah, Eason's a tough one to drop. He's been hooping. I'll try to hold, but I just lost Halliburton and Poeltl. That does stink. That does, yeah, it's a lot of injuries to try and deal with. How about Nimhard? Is he a must roster in 10-team leagues or 12-plus leagues? I picked up both Pacers guards just in case. Not a bad strategy. I think 10-team, I don't know if he is, unless you just really need some of those extra assists. I think I was looking at his numbers as a starter last year. Let me pull this back up because I was looking at his McConnell. So last year he started 63 games, averaged 10 points, 4.8 assists, 2.8 rebounds, and a steal. And let's see, as a starter this year, pretty comparable. 10 points, 4.6 assists, 2 boards, 0.6 steals, just 7 starts. And I think some of those, at least some of them, were alongside Tyrese Halliburton. It does also include the game that he exited early. So I think both are fine to pick up, but in a 10-team league, I'm certainly going to prioritize McConnell, who I think is more likely to start, whereas Nimhard should still play just like 20 or so minutes per game off the bench. Any larger league, 12, 14, 16, I think Nimhard should be picked up, but McConnell's the priority there. Is Dwop Reith worth a short-term ad? I'd say yes. I know I have him in a Dynasty league. I don't know if I have him in a redraft league right now, just because of the way that my teams have looked. Past 2 weeks, he's averaged 14.5 points, 7.8 boards, 1.8 threes, and a block in 26.4 minutes per game. Jabari Walker could play tonight, and that would cut into his minutes a little bit, cut into his production a little bit. But DeAndre Ayton's still out. We don't really know exactly. I think the only timeline that I've seen is that Chauncey Billups is hopeful that he returns on this road trip. And I was pretty the wording of that really threw me off because they kept saying hopeful that he returns to the team, and they didn't specify returns to the lineup or returns to playing, but it could have been what he meant. So they have 3 more games. They're back at home to play on Sunday. They have 3 more games in this road trip tonight, and then Thursday and Friday. I'd say Reith is worth an ad just for that opportunity there. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with him. He should give you a few more games of production and then maybe continue to stay in the rotation, provide deeper league value after that. But when Ayton's back, it's kind of hard to say, hey, this guy's going to be worth having on your roster. That's about what I have for Reith. But so which order should I drop these players? Easy first one is Andre Drummond for me. And then we have Nimhard, Tari Eason, and Malcolm Brogdon. Let me look at Brogdon's numbers briefly. It might be, is it Drummond and then Brogdon? Is it Drummond and then Brogdon? I think I'd actually drop. I think that this order is kind of what I do. I think Nimhard's upside with Tyrese Halliburton's out, like as long as Halliburton's out, is enough to keep him around over Tari Eason, even if Tari Eason is awesome. I think I would prioritize Nimhard for a couple weeks, and then maybe hopefully able to get Eason back. But if I can keep on to both, I'm probably happiest about that. Drummond's probably the first one I'd drop. He's played 23 minutes the last 2 games. He did have 21 points and 15 boards in 23 minutes last night. It was against Nick Richards and the Hornets. I'm assuming that either Vooch is going to be back in the starting lineup soon, or 23 minutes won't be enough time for him to produce standard league value aside from rebounds against most teams in the league. But, I think that's just kind of how I feel about Drummond. He was awesome the past couple weeks, but I think it's kind of time that now that Vooch is back, that he's no longer a great streaming option. And then Brogdon, I think, like looking at the numbers, last 4 games, he's played 22, 16, 17, and 21 minutes. That's not really enough time for him to produce standard league value. And the last time that he played more than that, let's see, he started and there was no Shaedon Sharpe and no Anthony Simons. Yeah. So since those guys have kind of been back, his minutes have been down. They're prioritizing the younger guys, which makes sense. It's a good move by Portland. Is he worth hanging on to if you can? Sure. Like maybe they have more injuries. They've already had a handful. But I don't think. Yeah, I think that I might be willing to cut the cord on Brogdon if I need to pick somebody up. But I would say that this order right here is probably about where I'd have it. And yeah, I think this is that's all the questions I have. I will, now that I'm looking through news real quick, I'll reference Draymond Green makes it clear that he has no return date and it's up to Kerr, his teammates, and the medical staff. That's a tweet from Mark J. Spears. So, I believe the initial expectation was that he'd play on Sunday, and him giving no return date doesn't mean that he won't play on Sunday. It just means that there isn't an official return date, but that's about it. Like he could definitely be back. By Sunday, it could be longer. We'll see what they kind of choose to do. They also gave him an indefinite suspension. I believe it lasted like 3 weeks since he last played. I don't remember the specific day that he was hit with the suspension. But yeah, so we'll see. That's just something to keep an eye on. Actually, I can probably pull this up now. Last time he played was December 12th. So it's been less than a month since he was suspended indefinitely. So just him saying that there isn't a timeline just means that there isn't one. It could still be rather soon. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because there's no more questions. As always, thank you guys for joining me for this. If you want, you can give me a follow on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, at NoRubin22. And yeah, I will see you guys next week at the same time. But have a good week.